お前も俺の前に立つならなぎ倒す。
I know I've been kind of on Yu-Gi-Oh kick as of late, and this video won't be any different, but we're actually going to be very negative today.
I say go for it.
Plus, we get to talk about villains, so hooray!
Hallelujah! I mean, that sucks!
I touched on this character and topic a while ago in a more general sense when I ranted and raved about Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, but I promised ages ago that I would talk about this villain in his own video. And I even brought him up in my redemption video earlier this year. Guess how that went? But again, I felt an actual video would be best for this subject. Thus, Leo Akaba of Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. Hey! And I ain't gonna lie, I am very biased here. You see, like a lot of people who have issues with Arc 5, I actually enjoyed the first half of the series, since it had a lot of interesting concepts, had a lot of callbacks to Yu-Gi-Oh! Including beloved archetypes, and it allowed people to follow a protagonist who was struggling to learn a new summoning method, which had an element that many people who watched the show at the time could relate to because, well, pendulum summoning was new at the time, and seeing the MC Yugioh screwing up with a mechanic he invented but didn't know how to use, it was fresh and relatable at the time. Of course, all of that went down the drain in the second season. I know that it's very tempting to put the blame on a certain character who showed up. Fuck you, crew! But mimetic jokes aside, you can't really bog down Arc 5's issues to one singular trait. But for Leo Akaba, especially as a villainous character, well, you can pin that down much more easily, especially when you look at him as a villain. I'm MangaKamen, and this is Screwing Up Your Villains, Leo Akaba. This is the part of the video where I explain who Leo Akaba is and his motivations. If you're not interested in hearing me summarize the character and part of the plot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, or you just want to see me tear into the bald bastard, I can't say I blame you for either of those choices.
There is logic in what he says.
Thank you, YouTube, for having chapters. Or at least until you decide to remove that feature as well. Oh well. For those who either love my melodic voice or are generally curious about how I'm about to sum this up, wait no further.
It's really kind of like, what is happening right now?
Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5's world, at least for the purposes of this video, is split into 4 dimensions, most of them corresponding to the prominent summoning methods that were introduced before this game. A fusion dimension, a synchro one, an Xyz one, and a standard one, which is basically a small mixture of the previous 3, but everyone just sucks at their own summoning method. Link summons weren't a thing yet, though I can imagine seeing all the other dimensions coming together to blast that summoning method into the ground. Although to be fair, in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 stories, the dimensions are at war. Why, you may be asking? Because Leo Akaba is the head of Academia, a militaristic school in the fusion dimension. He's the big bad pulling all the strings in the events of the show, with his son Reiji opposing him as the leader of the Lancers, the group of our heroes. The main goal behind Leo's machinations is the Arc 5 reactor and the dimensional fusion plan, which are teased to be this grand world-altering scheme, and not helped by the fact that his soldiers in the fusion dimension are going around trapping people in carts and destroying cities. Now, while I haven't given his motivations yet, how the show goes about showcasing Leo is an interesting one. We don't get the reveal of the fusion dimension being the culprit of a war in the first half of the first season. Leo's the kind of villain who's a shadowy figure, and it isn't until episode 36 that we actually see him, and get a hint of the Arc 5 reactor as well. It's really mysterious stuff, and throw in the fact when you just look at Leo, the Emperor military outfit, the grafted on machinery on his head, the blood veins on the other side of that noggin, it's a design that just screams evil bad guy Emperor.
Some students found Sora unconscious on campus. We had him hospitalized immediately. As far as how he got there, we analyzed his dual disk. The fail-safe activated. He must have revealed something.
So long as he did not reveal everything.
This is the kind of introduction where you're actively trying to make the character look intimidating and menacing. The shadows over the eyes, the positioning of the character as he talks to a subordinate looming over him on top of the stairs, the eerie green light behind him that accentuates his silhouette. This is the kind of introduction that screams big boss levels of artistic design for villains. You can't fault me for thinking, oh shit, this is the big bad. Now, it's here where I need to complain for a minute. In a video I made a long while ago that has gotten some traction lately, a lot of people brought up the idea you can't be a villain if you have a noble goal or believe what you're doing is for the greater good. Son of a bitch. And Leo has 2 motivations, which attempt to make him into a tragic kind of villain, and both are related. So, in a technical sense, Leo is the one who caused the dimensional break that separated the 4 dimensions. Because of his original work in the conjoined world, a duelist named Zark
Zark! What?
Use the solid vision technology to attack people. And to clarify quickly, the solid vision basically allows the monsters created by Dual Discs to have mass and obviously...
Until one day...
they can be used to hurt people, and the crowds just ate it up. Eventually, Zark went crazy with this and fused with his iconic dragons to become a huge kaiju monster that would destroy the world. Leo had developed a way to stop Zark, but his daughter Rei took the method and used it herself. This effectively split her, Zark, and the world into 4 dimensions apart, with no one remembering what had happened to the original dimension. Then one day, after establishing the Leo Corporation, recreating the solid vision aspect, and regaining his memories, Leo began to obsess over his daughter's survival. And he did find a fragment of her, Serena, and while she didn't have any of Rei's memories, Leo did recall that Rei had split into 4 beings, and with there being 4 dimensions, well, you don't need to be a genius to figure out that math. So yeah, Leo's motivation is twofold. 1 is to fuse his daughter and dimensions together again, and 2 is to prevent Zark from reviving. If that second one kinda comes out of nowhere, it just does. I get it though. A father character who watches his daughter effectively die in front of him, why wouldn't he want to do anything to save his kid? It makes sense, and to top it off, reuniting the 4 dimensions also makes a lot of logical sense here too. But as I keep saying in that one video, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, because, as I stated, he started an interdimensional war. And not just that, but he effectively propagandized the fusion dimension to become soldiers for this thing, with a good portion of them being psychopaths who get their kicks out of sicking mechanical mutts on duelists and turning them into cards. The thing is, Leo's motivations are understandable, and you can empathize with him, because what father wouldn't do anything to save his kid? Well, regardless, Leo's a shitty father anyway, because he did marry someone else in the standard dimension, had another kid, built a company, but then basically abandoned them all without a word. And instead of, taking the time to actually try a diplomatic way, he decided to go all scorched earth with his plan, and you know what, I'll save that for later in the video. Point is, Leo. He had all the makings to be an interesting villain, a scientist who reclaimed his memories of the original world, racked by guilt of not only causing the situation, but also losing his daughter because of it. This is great potential for a villain who has the core themes of Arc 5 of unity and division and turning them on their head to give Leo a philosophical weight as an antagonist. Leo could have been made into a very great standout villain, especially with the existential stakes that were on the line. And they screwed it up. So with all that said, how in the world did they mess up such a good villain concept? Well, there are 3 main issues that I have here. 1, the pacing of the story. 2, his quote-unquote redemption. And finally, they made him into an idiot.
The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
I know that can be a lot to deal with, so let's really put things into perspective and start with the pacing of the story. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a character and a villain being in the background while showing the influence that he has. That's actually pretty good. And with Leo, it's not like when we saw him in episode 36. That was the last time we saw him. Hell, just 5 episodes later we get a flashback where we can see a bit into Leo's character, where we see how he's so detached from his own son Reiji and how he's keeping Serena trapped on the island. We get a good look at his design, and he comes off as a cold and calculating man. And during the Arc League Championship arc, we were able to see how brutal the forces that Leo Akaba has accrued, and how he's able to convince so many people to join him in on a war against dimensions. Sure, we didn't get a lot of him during that arc, but we could see what his influence was like. But the thing is, when we get to the 2nd season, Leo Akaba might as well be just a menacing wall, because as anyone who's watched the anime will tell you, when we get to the second half, we now have to spend 40 episodes in the synchro dimension going through another tournament that barely has anything noticeable to it, except bringing back one of the best characters in Yu-Gi-Oh!
Is Jack Atlas not the finest sushi chef in the land?
Oh, we're a pizza joint, you nut!
All the while, Leo's just sitting on his ass on his big, gaudy throne. It isn't until the end of that arc that he decides that it's a good idea to invade the synchro dimension to reclaim the part of his daughter, Serena. But the biggest issue is that all that motivation and such I brought up, that doesn't come up until near the end of the series, and it honestly all falls apart because of that. Now, it's a great motivation for why he's doing what he's doing, but there are quite a few issues. Number 1, we never actually see his rise to power, becoming the professor and the highest authority of what is to effectively to an entire dimension. We don't see how he was able to convince so many people to go to war and effectively become supremacists in a children's card game. Mostly gives a flashback as to how the dimensions were split and why he's doing it. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who will complain about things happening off screen most of the time, but when you got someone who's able to max out charisma to convince people to go to frickin' war, I do kinda expect a silver-tongued devil, but nope. Instead, we've got a bald idiot. And as a result, it confuses me how someone like this could have gotten the position he has in a dimension that he's effectively have no connection to. And it's not like it couldn't have a reason for how this goes about it. Leo Akaba was a scientist who created solid vision. Maybe his technological know-how could have been done the trick here and there and gotten him a position in the higher-ups of the academy. Hell, the show kind of implies this, but we never actually see it. But since there's no time to explain his rise to power, it hurts him as a villain since he certainly doesn't have the charisma to pull this off, and because we don't get his backstory until episodes 126 to 127, it kind of leaves a bit to be desired for the guy who was built up to be a big bad of the entire series, except that's not even true, now is it? Of course, one of the biggest issues is due to a trope. So, tell me folks, have you heard of the man behind the man? It's a trope where despite there being a clearly established villain, another villain comes out of nowhere and basically steals the stage. And that isn't exactly what happens with Leo and later Zark, the latter being a villain that I don't really care for. Yeah, Zark. He tries to destroy the world, and almost immediately, Leo is no longer the bad guy. What he was doing was trying to reforge the world and stop Zark from resurrecting. As a result, the lack of proper build-up and how much focus there is on Leo, it ultimately hurts both Leo and Zark as villains because how rushed the last arc is to try to explain both of them, and it undercuts what Leo was trying to do severely, because Zark steals the role of main villain. This ties into the issue of his redemption, where it effectively becomes this.
Boat, Jaws. Rawr, I'm gonna eat your boat, and then I'm gonna eat you guys. Rawr! Oh my god, what's that? It's bigger, Jaws. Oh my god, now we have a common enemy. We have to work together.
You think I'm joking, but I'm not. Literally the whole thing is Leo screwed up, it gets pointed out, Zark gets revived, and then everyone just seems to have lost their brains and forgot that Leo pulled all this war crap. Well, say for one guy. But yeah, his redemption as a character is where things get really dumb, because ultimately he caused the suffering of so many people, started a war, pretty much killed 4 fragments of Rei, who were each their own person, I may add, who had personalities, lives, and loved ones and dimensions, for the most part, and worst of all, it was all because of his actions that Zark got revived, despite the fact that there were clues pointing this out, and even worse, it's not like he couldn't have stopped the revival at all. I'll get more into this when I start calling him an idiot, but because of the rushed pacing and the redemption, as well as Zark taking the role as the main villain, it effectively ruins whatever potential Leo had as a villain. You can say that maybe I'm salty because I didn't get what I wanted, and that's a perfectly fine response, though I would counter that Arc 5 was setting the pieces there, and while there were small hints of a darkness inside the Zark fragments, it really feels cheap to have all this focus on Leo's actions and then pretty much forget everything he did. The show tries so hard to make him out to be an irredeemable SOB in the first half of the show, but then goes to make him sympathetic, and expects us to swallow that he's actually a good guy after he basically committed Yugioh genocide. Hard to forgive the guy who essentially created a machine that ran on the souls of trapped humans, brainwashed kids into becoming soldiers, and kidnapped 4 teenage girls. Of course, the biggest sin is that Leo Akaba, he's a goddamn idiot.
Oh, lovely. They've sent me a moron!
When you really look back at a character like Leo and how he viewed things, some of them can be understandable, such as how Leo didn't view either the fragments of Rei or Zark as their own people, or even how dimensions weren't the actual worlds either. It's tunnel vision, and in that regard, I can understand to a degree why he does the things he does. The problem lies in that excuse can only answer so much. For example, we're shown directly in the show that when Yugioh, the main character, also a fragment of Zark, is being possessed by Zark, it's Yuzu, his childhood friend and fragment of Rei, that calms him down.
What's happening? My hand!
No! On ice raging dragon! Go! Attack pendulum ruler!
This isn't you!
Do it now! Infernal fury strike!
And this is done right in front of Leo, mind you. And what does he do? Oh, he decides that this doesn't matter and begins to fuse the girls together, making them fade away one by one. Which, shock of all shocks, since Yugioh was trying to save Yuzu from the professor here, and she's being killed right in front of him, that pretty much causes Zark to be revived. Then again, Leo thinks the best idea is to keep pushing the fragment of Zark into a frenzy throughout the time they're in the same room, provoking him constantly. Which, fun fact, there's a line in this episode where Leo chastises his son Reiji for working with a fragment of Zark.
And the piece of Zark from the standard dimension is Yugioh. To make certain that Zark can never resurrect again, we must eliminate him.
A few moments later.
You talk about uniting the dimensions. How can you unite people when you break family and friends apart? So no, I'm not joining you, Father.
But he just so happens to conveniently forget that he practically raised another fragment of Zark, Yuri, to be a child soldier and a frickin' psychopath. Hello, Pot. Meet Keto. Meet the dumb-ass baldy Leo, the dumbest hypocrite of them all. And don't get it twisted. We're told outright that Leo knew that Yuri was a part of Zark. But instead of, I don't know, killing the fragment of the guy who tried to destroy the world? Nah, that would be too stupid. Let's just train the guy to be a soldier, have him go to other dimensions unsupervised, hunt down the fragments of Rei. What could possibly go wrong? It's not like there's a chance that the other fragments of Zark would be close by to the Rei fragments. Oh wait! Literally, all three of them are childhood friends with a fragment of Zark. If at any point any of the fragments of Zark confronted Yuri to fight them, and Yuri beat them, then Zark would have been all that close to reviving, because Yuri would then absorb them into him. Did Leo do anything to stop the fragments of Zark before this part of the story? No, because you know what Leo Akaba is? He's MORON! Even if you didn't want to kill Yuri when he was a kid, you literally could have done anything else other than turning into a psychopathic soldier. When you could have prevented the actual big bad from reviving by locking up one kid, you know you screwed up. I'd also like to point out that there was never an attempt to actually try to do things peacefully. The guy just decides to abandon his family, creating a teleporter to other dimensions, and decides war is the best thing to do. I guess the guy doesn't really have a silver tongue. And here's the thing, it wouldn't have been hard to make Leo out to be a good villain and sympathetic.
Give me the fucking formula, crap!
Now, if I can have a few minutes of egotism, I believe there are a few things that can be done to fix Leo Akaba as a villain. My first suggestion is that instead of trying to revive his daughter solely, maybe, just maybe, have the whole 4 dimensions being on the verge of collapse. You could still have him being after his daughter as a side motive, but the real reason why Leo's so frantic to fuse the dimensions is that they'll be destroyed if he doesn't. Hell, make it so that the fragments of Rei are the keys to doing that. It'd make a lot more sense. It can even add a ticking clock part to this. You could showcase this by having rips appearing between all dimensions, with people appearing in different locations, eventually having full-on chunks of areas being swapped between dimensions. It would make a lot more sense as to why Leo is willing to speed things up with his plan. Diplomacy may not be an option when the destruction of existence is on the table immediately, because we all know how bureaucracy works. The other idea is that Leo could have a complex about the situation. When Zark, Rei, and the world were split, originally Leo was going to sacrifice himself, but Rei got in the way and made the sacrifice instead. You could make it that Leo got crushed by survivor's guilt, which was kind of what they were trying to go with, but take it to a much more extreme. Make it so that he owes it to Rei that he should save the dimensions. He even be coming to the point where he gets obsessed with doing that. Hell, even make it because of this that he doesn't realize that Rei and Zark did fragment. As far as he knows, they're both dead, and with the memory of his daughter fueling him, he tries to fix the issues that he did, going to the extremes. Of course, if all that didn't work, I'd personally like to see Leo Akaba get his ass handed to him by most of the cast after everything he did. That's really the biggest rut I have with the character. How after all the bad stuff he did, pretty much everyone just decided that he worked with us to defeat the real evil, so everything he did was under the bridge. Kurosaki was in the right to want to kick his ass. Leo didn't see any of the Rei or Zark fragments of people, which makes me wish this fan comic was actually canon. It's not like there aren't any ways to make his character work as a villain. There are countless ways, like actually keeping him as the main villain. But at this point, I'm going around in circles. Leo sucks as a character and even more so as a villain, which is disappointing. I know that Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 was about 8 years old at this point, but Leo is kind of symbolic of what I really dislike about villain writing nowadays. And that would be the fact that because a character does so many bad things, and yet we're supposed to immediately forget all of that because not only is there a bigger evil that woke up because of Leo's actions, but because Leo also has a sad backstory. Don't get me wrong, I understand a father trying to do whatever he can to get his daughter back. That can be a great motivation for how someone could fall down the pit of despair. But the issue is how the show just expects the audience to ignore all the bad things he's done up till that point. It'd be the same as if a hero doing something horrible, laughing about it, and then expecting the entire audience to not think at the very least, this is our hero? It's a disconnect, and even more so when the narrative basically just decides to ignore all of that. And what makes it worse is Zark. I don't have an issue with villains being usurped by other villains. Hell, when I talked about video game villains back in June, I literally used this guy as a positive example.
Just a second.
You've got to be hearing things.
Hades?
Who's Hades?
The true master of the underworld.
Sorry to keep you waiting, but now that I'm here, let's get this party started!
Hades kind of comes out of nowhere and takes over as being the big bad for the rest of the game, which is kind of what Zark is. But unlike Hades and Kid Icarus Uprising, we don't get a lot of time with Zark since a lot of the focus is on Leo Akaba for the majority of the story when he's the main villain. By the way, go watch that video if you haven't. YouTube's being dumb and changing our algorithm, so I appreciate it. Leave a like on this one and that one, it helps out a lot. Hell, maybe if Leo was completely unaware of Zark being revived, it would have been better, because at least then you wouldn't have him mentoring a piece of the psychopath knowingly and allowing him to go around unchecked. Arc 5 as a series, it has a lot of issues. Most anyone who's familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime knows this, and to me, Leo Akaba is a great representation of its flaws. I think what's worse though is that we've had villains in this very franchise who had similar motivations, that they lost someone they loved and are willing to do whatever they can in order to get them back, having fallen down to the pits of despair because of it. The formula was already written, but for whatever reason, it was just ignored. In any case, thanks for listening to me rant about this. I've always enjoyed tearing into terrible villains, and if you have a villain you'd like me to look into, positive or negative, from games, anime, or whatever, let me know in the comments below. I want to expand my horizons and grow as a creator. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like, a comment, and make sure you have that bell on. YouTube has been changing things up and every little bit helps. Hell, consider joining up with my YouTube memberships, follow me on Patreon, Ko-Fi, or even on my Twitch, and even, hey, I got a Discord you can join too. Thanks for watching. I'm MangaKamen. Have a great day, guys, and God, Arc 5 was a mess. Maybe the manga version of it is much better and coming soon.